Why does society seem to hate intelligence? Why are the brightest minds often overlooked, or even despised, by the very people they seek to enlighten? It's a paradox that has puzzled thinkers for centuries. One philosopher who confronted this uncomfortable truth head-on was Arthur Schopenhauer. He believed that intelligence, rather than being celebrated, is often feared, suppressed, or misunderstood. In this video, we're going to explore why Schopenhauer argued that society, in its essence, is uncomfortable with those who can see beyond the surface, challenge the status quo, and expose the truths that others are unwilling to confront. Stick around to uncover why being truly intelligent can often feel like a curse, and why society, more often than not, chooses to reject those who possess it. Schopenhauer was a man who saw the world through a rather dark lens. He believed that much of human suffering was rooted in the way our minds are wired and how society interacts with those who think differently. He often argued that intelligence, especially of the kind that questions established norms, is not just ignored, it is actively rejected. The mind that can see the truth can often become a threat to the status quo, and as Schopenhauer saw it, that's something society has a hard time dealing with. Chapter 1: The Will to Power and the Herd Mentality. To understand Schopenhauer's view on intelligence, we need to begin with one of his most important concepts, the will to power. For Schopenhauer, human beings are driven not by reason, but by an irrational force, the will. The will is an insatiable primal force that compels us to seek power to survive and to reproduce. It's what drives our instincts, desires, and actions. We don't think about it consciously, but it shapes almost every part of our lives. The problem with this will to power is that it leads to a certain conformity in society. Schopenhauer argued that most people are more interested in securing their place within the societal hierarchy and satisfying their basic needs than in seeking higher truths. This is where the herd mentality comes in. Most people in society follow the crowd, adhering to social norms, traditions, and popular opinions without questioning them. It's safer this way. It's easier. It's how you avoid conflict. But intelligence doesn't fit neatly into this picture. The truly intelligent person, someone who can think critically and independently, becomes a threat to the herd. They challenge conventions, question beliefs, and often point out uncomfortable truths that others would rather ignore. In a world where most people are more concerned with survival and maintaining the status quo, intelligence can be seen as a disruptor, and disruptions are often met with resistance. Schopenhauer's view is that intelligence requires a degree of detachment from the world around us. A truly intelligent person doesn't just go along with what everyone else is doing. They don't mindlessly follow trends or adopt to beliefs of the majority. They have the ability to see beyond the surface level and critically assess what's really going on. But this critical, independent thinking can often lead to alienation. It's not always comfortable to be the person who sees things differently from everyone else. And it's even more uncomfortable when that person points out that society is wrong. Chapter 2: The Fear of the Individual. One of Schopenhauer's most striking observations is that society is afraid of the individual, especially the individual who doesn't conform. He believed that human beings are essentially herd animals. The desire to belong, to be part of a group, is deeply ingrained in us. This is partly due to our evolutionary history, where being part of a group increased our chances of survival. As a result, society often views any kind of individualism as dangerous. The intelligent person in Schopenhauer's view is the ultimate individual. They stand apart from the herd. They don't conform to social norms, and they aren't motivated by the same desires that drive the majority. This makes them a potential threat to the social order, especially when their ideas challenge widely accepted beliefs or practices. Schopenhauer wasn't shy about expressing his contempt for the masses. He believed that the general population was often unthinking and easily manipulated. In his writings, he frequently lamented the fact that society was more interested in trivial distractions than the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom. And because the intelligent person does not conform to these distractions, they are often shunned or dismissed as outsiders. But Schopenhauer's critique goes deeper. The fear of the intelligent individual is not just about social conformity, it's also about power. Society, particularly the powers that be, benefit from keeping people in line. The more people are invested in the status quo, the less likely they are to question the systems of power that control their lives. Intelligence, true intelligence, the kind that can see through the illusions we live by, poses a direct challenge to that power. This is why intelligent people are often marginalized. They represent a threat to the established order. Chapter 3. The Role of Education. Schopenhauer also had strong opinions about education, and in many ways his critique of modern education still holds relevance today. For Schopenhauer, education was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it could provide the tools necessary for an individual to think critically and independently. On the other hand, it could simply train people to become good servants of the system, cogs in the machine. Schopenhauer believed that the purpose of education should be to cultivate true wisdom, not just to prepare people for a career or make them obedient citizens. However, he observed that most education systems focus more on producing obedient workers than on fostering intellectual independence. This, he argued, was another way in which society rejected intelligence. The education system, by focusing on practical skills and rote memorization, stifled creativity and critical thinking. It encouraged conformity rather than individuality. In Schopenhauer's time, this was a criticism of the growing trend of industrialization and the rise of bureaucratic societies. Today, we might see echoes of this in the way modern education is geared toward preparing students for standardized tests and university degrees, rather than encouraging deep thinking or self-reflection. In this sense, education becomes a tool for maintaining the social order rather than for fostering true intellectual development. Chapter 4. The Role of Art and Aesthetics. If you've read Schopenhauer, you'll know that he placed a great deal of importance on art and aesthetics. For him, art was one of the few ways to transcend the will and the suffering that come with it. Through art, individuals could step outside of the mundane concerns of daily life and experience something more profound and eternal. In this view, art provided an escape from the irrational will that governs most of human existence. But here's the interesting thing. Schopenhauer believed that people who were deeply attuned to art and aesthetics were often out of sync with the rest of society. The appreciation of art requires a certain level of detachment from the world. It demands an ability to see beyond the surface level and recognize beauty and meaning where others might not. In this sense, Schopenhauer saw the artist, or the person deeply immersed in the world of art, as another kind of intellectual outsider. They were, in many ways, the opposite of the conformist. And once again, this kind of person was often rejected by society. While the masses sought distractions, the artists sought meaning. While others were busy chasing after material wealth and power, the artist pursued something transcendent. For Schopenhauer, this division between the intellectual or artistic individual and the herd was a central feature of human life. It wasn't just a social problem, it was a metaphysical one. The world, as Schopenhauer saw it, was full of suffering and ignorance, and only the truly intelligent or the truly artistic person could see this suffering for what it was. But because most people were unwilling or unable to confront this truth, they rejected those who could. Chapter 5. The Bitter Loneliness of Intelligence. Schopenhauer was famously pessimistic about human nature, and one of the recurring themes in his work is the idea of the bitter loneliness that comes with intelligence. To be truly intelligent, in his view, was to be isolated. The intelligent person, by virtue of their ability to see beyond the illusions of society, often finds themselves distanced from others. They can't engage in shallow conversation about trivial matters because they are too aware of the deeper issues that play. They can't participate in the mindless pursuits that dominate popular culture because they see them for what they are, distractions from the deeper questions of life. In Schopenhauer's view, this intellectual isolation was an inevitable part of our life for anyone who truly wanted to understand the world, and yet society often punished the intelligent person for their refusal to conform. They were seen as strange, difficult, or even dangerous. The result was a kind of loneliness that was difficult to escape. But Schopenhauer didn't see this loneliness as something to be mourned. In fact, he believed it was the price one had to pay for true wisdom. The intelligent person, in his view, had to learn to accept this isolation as part of their path. It was through this detachment from the herd that they could come to understand the world more deeply, free of distractions and illusions that society clings to. So why does society reject intelligence? Why does it fear and marginalize those who think differently? According to Schopenhauer, it's because intelligence poses a threat to the status quo. The intelligent person doesn't conform to social norms or blindly accept the prevailing beliefs. Instead, they challenge the world as it is, and in doing so, they make others uncomfortable. In Schopenhauer's philosophy, intelligence isn't just a gift, it's a burden. It separates individuals from the herd and makes them outsiders. It forces them to confront uncomfortable truths that most people would rather avoid. As a result, society often rejects them, either by ignoring them, ridiculing them, or actively opposing them. But for Schopenhauer, this rejection wasn't something to be feared or avoided. It was part of the price of intellectual independence. The intelligent person, though isolated and misunderstood, has the rare opportunity to see the world for what it truly is. They may be rejected by society, but in doing so, they become free from the limitations that bind the majority. So the next time you find yourself feeling alienated or rejected for your thoughts or ideas, remember that you might be following in the footsteps of some of the greatest minds in history. Minds that society didn't always understand, but who ultimately changed the way we see the world. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video gave you something to think about. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.